Behind his cold stare and silent demeanor, Aniello Dellacroce wasn't just the loyal right hand of the Gambino family. He was the silent force steering the shadows of New York's underworld. We will learn about this man's life and how he became the underboss, the second most powerful of the Gambino family. Aniello Joseph Dellacroce was born on March 15, 1914, in the Italian section of Manhattan. As the name suggests, Little Italy was home to a large population of Italian immigrants. A mass migration from Italy to the United States had occurred in the late 1800s, and many of those who arrived in New York settled within a few blocks of Mulberry Street. At the time of Dellacroce's birth, the Little Italy section of Manhattan was plagued by crime and poverty. The mano nera, Black Hand, an extortion method used by organized crime groups like the Camorra and the Sicilian Mafia, was active in the area. These groups employed violence and intimidation to extort money from local businesses. Dellacroce's parents were Francesco Dellacroce and Antoinette Vecchione, both Neapolitan immigrants from San Paolo Belsito, Italy. He had an older brother named Carmine and an older sister named Lucy. He grew up across from what would later become known as the Ravenite Social Club. Just up the block from his home, at the corner of Mulberry and Kenmare Streets, stood a notorious mafia hangout called the Alto Knights Social Club, where figures like Lucky Luciano and Vito Genovese conducted business. Many of New York's early mafia luminaries, such as Giuseppe Morello, Ignazio Lupo, and Joe Bonanno, frequented Mulberry Street. Dellacroce worked as a butcher's apprentice in his youth, but growing up in the mafia-controlled, poverty-stricken neighborhood of Little Italy, he was influenced by local mobsters and soon turned to a life of crime. His criminal activities began in his teens, and by the age of 16, Dellacroce was sentenced to 2.5 years at the Elmira Reformatory for a shop burglary conviction. After his release, he continued to build connections within the mafia and solidify his street reputation. He began going by Neil, a shortened and anglicized version of his first name, Aniello. In 1937, Neil was arrested again and pleaded guilty to assault, serving 6 months in prison. By the late 1930s, the young hoodlum had caught the attention of the Mangano family. The Manganos were one of the founding families of the New York Mafia, and Dellacroce soon became an associate before being formally inducted as a member. Also part of the Mangano family was a shrewd young gangster who would one day become the boss of bosses, Carlo Gambino. Gambino's cousin, Paul Castellano, was another key figure in the family, and Paul was also Gambino's brother-in-law, having married Gambino's sister, Catherine. The underboss of the Mangano family was the fearsome Albert Anastasia, known for his violent tendencies and reputation as a ruthless killer. Anastasia controlled the Brooklyn docks alongside his brother, Tony. He also collaborated with Jewish gangster Louis Lepke Buchalter, the nation's top labor racketeer who ran the enforcement arm of the syndicate known as Murder, Inc. Dellacroce joined this syndicate, which consisted primarily of Jewish gangsters with a smaller Italian contingent. They operated out of a candy store in Brownsville, Brooklyn, owned by a gangster named Louis Capone. Dellacroce started as a hitman for Murder, Inc. and became a protégé of Anastasia. He was trained by some of the most seasoned and brutal killers in the New York underworld. During its decade of activity, Murder, Inc. was believed to have committed over 1,000 murders, many of which remain unsolved. Dellacroce was often described as having a killer's stare. His cold, piercing gaze sent chills down the spines of those who crossed him. Detective Ralph Salerno once remarked that Dellacroce had the eyes of a killer and was one of the few mobsters who genuinely frightened him. Like his mentor Anastasia, Dellacroce earned a reputation as a merciless killer. It was said he enjoyed looking into his victims' eyes as he killed them, relishing the moment their eyes went lifeless. In 1951, Mangano family boss Vincent Mangano disappeared and was never seen again, likely murdered on Anastasia's orders to seize control of the family. Anastasia then took over, renaming it the Anastasia family. Carlo Gambino quickly rose to underboss, and Neil Dellacroce became a capo regime under their leadership. A faction within the Anastasia family, led by Capo Armand Tommy Rava, emerged. Rava, a Gambino loyalist with ties to multiple rackets, became Dellacroce's close ally. Rava's crew included powerful members like Salvador Toto Morello and John Johnny Roberts Robolato. Robolato was suspected of involvement in the 1951 assassination of Willie Moretti, a Genovese family underboss and Frank Sinatra's godfather, who was gunned down while dining at a New Jersey restaurant. During this time, Dellacroce met a young hoodlum named John Gotti, who ran errands for Gambino Capo Carmine Fatico. Dellacroce married a woman named
Lucille
Riccardi, and a year later, their son, Armand Aniello Dellacroce, was born named in honor of his ally, Tommy Rava. In 1956, Gambino established his headquarters at 247 Mulberry Street, naming it the Ravenite Social Club after his favorite poem, Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven. The Ravenite would serve as the Gambino family's primary hub for decades. On August 31st, 1956, Dellacroce was arrested in a raid at the Ravenite, charged with vagrancy despite carrying over $2,000 in cash. He was also accused of consorting with known criminals and possessing an illegal blackjack. The arrest was part of a police crackdown following the acid attack on journalist Victor Riesel, who had been investigating union corruption. A major shift in the crime syndicate occurred on October 25, 1957, when Albert Anastasia was assassinated in a barber's chair. The hit was orchestrated by Carlo Gambino and Vito Genovese to eliminate the unpredictable Anastasia and consolidate power. Gambino was elevated to boss, and the family was renamed in his honor. Initially, Dellacroce opposed Gambino's ascension, supporting Tommy Rava as Anastasia's successor. However, after Rava mysteriously disappeared in Florida in 1958, reportedly killed on Gambino's orders, Dellacroce pledged loyalty to Gambino. As one of Gambino's top lieutenants, Dellacroce oversaw various rackets, earning immense respect and the nickname Capodecina de Capodecina, Captain of Captains. He was also called the O'Neill, after disguising himself as a priest to carry out a hit. By 1965, Gambino promoted Dellacroce to underboss, solidifying his position as the family's second in command. The media dubbed him the second most powerful mafia boss in the U.S. Unlike Gambino, a devoted family man, Dellacroce was a notorious womanizer with children by multiple women. He wielded significant influence over the Brooklyn docks and several trucking unions nationwide. On September 22, 1966, Dellacroce attended a high-profile meeting of East Coast crime bosses at La Stella Restaurant in Queens. The gathering, later dubbed the Little Appalachian Meeting, led to the arrest of 13 mobsters, including Dellacroce, on conspiracy charges. In 1971, a Wall Street informant exposed the mafia's deep involvement in securities fraud, implicating Dellacroce. Later that year, he was sentenced to a year in prison for refusing to testify before a grand jury investigating a mafia casino takeover in the Dominican Republic. After his release, Dellacroce resumed control of the Ravenite. In 1972, he faced tax evasion charges for failing to report over $100,000 in stock holdings from Yankee Plastics, a company he extorted. That same year, rising gangster John Gotti, recently released from prison, began working for the Gambinos under Capo Carmine Fatico. Gotti crossed paths with another up-and-coming mobster, Sammy the Bull Gravano, who later defected from the Colombo family to join the Gambinos. By the early 1970s, Gambino's health declined, and Dellacroce took over daily operations. His power grew so immense that many regarded him as the second most powerful figure in the underworld. As Dellacroce solidified his position as Gambino's underboss, his influence extended beyond traditional mafia operations. He became deeply involved in labor racketeering, particularly with the Teamsters Union, leveraging his connections to control key industries like construction, waste management, and garment district businesses. His ability to mediate disputes between rival factions earned him respect even among non-Italian organized crime groups. One of Dellacroce's most significant contributions to the Gambino family was his mentorship of younger mobsters. While maintaining old-school mafia traditions, he recognized the need to adapt to changing times. His crew at the Ravenite Social Club became a training ground for future leaders, including the ambitious John Gotti, who would later challenge the established order. The 1970s saw Dellacroce navigating complex power dynamics. When Carlo Gambino surprisingly bypassed him to name his cousin Paul Castellano as successor in 1976, tensions simmered beneath the surface. Though Dellacroce publicly accepted the decision honoring the mafia's chain of command, many soldiers resented Castellano's appointment, viewing Dellacroce as the legitimate heir. This slight would later fuel the Gambino family's infamous civil war. Dellacroce's faction, based in Manhattan's Little Italy, increasingly clashed with Castellano's more corporate-minded Brooklyn wing. The divide reflected broader changes in organized crime. Dellacroce represented the street-level rackets and traditional mustache Pete values, while Castellano focused on white-collar crimes and high-level corruption. Despite their differences, Dellacroce maintained an uneasy truce with Castellano, partly out of respect for Gambino's dying wish, and partly because Castellano allowed him to continue operating independently. This arrangement kept the peace temporarily, but planted seeds for future conflict. Dellacroce's legal troubles mounted in his later years. In 1973, he was convicted of tax evasion and served a brief prison sentence. The FBI's intensified surveillance during this period captured him conducting business at the Ravenite, including meetings with rising stars like Gotti and Gravano. These tapes would later prove crucial in prosecuting the Gambino hierarchy. By the early 1980s, the aging underboss's health began failing, but his authority remained unquestioned. Even as Castellano courted media attention and political connections, street-level crews still reported to Dellacroce first. His death from cancer in 1985 at age 71 removed the last buffer between Castellano and the disgruntled faction, led by Gotti, setting the stage for the dramatic power grab that would reshape the American Mafia. If you like the video, don't forget to like and subscribe.